So the folks at GSC International Screens have a little treat for us. They brought in the brand new adaptation, French adaptation of the Count of Monte Cristo, which was directed by the two guys who wrote the fantastic recent adaptation of The Three Musketeers, parts 1 and 2. We both absolutely loved those adaptations. It felt almost like a Hollywood blockbuster take on the classic Dumas novel. Now, The Count of Monte Cristo is not an easy novel to adapt. I think the English version runs at like 1,300 pages, and I haven't read it in a while, but I think 800 or 900 of those pages are him in a prison plotting revenge. So there is a lot of inner turmoil going on, and translating that to screen is a difficult task, and a lot of people have failed.
I haven't read the book ever, but am I also accurate to say that those 800, 900 pages was him by himself? Because this isn't a Shawshank Redemption style prison. This is solitary confinement.
There is a fellow inmate, and that's part of the story, and that comes into it, and we'll explain what that is if you don't know the Count of Monte Cristo. But then the Count of Monte Cristo is actually something that every French school kid will be aware of. Like, the story is taught in schools. I think outside of France, unless you grew up loving the Three Musketeers and then wanting to discover what else Dumas wrote, you may not be familiar with the story. But it's a really, really clever piece of work. So Dumas in this one begins with the happy ending. Basically, Edmond Dantes is promoted to a captain. He's a seaman who's been recently promoted to a captain. He's found the girl of his dreams. Everything is going great in his life. He's about to get married. And this is the first 15 minutes of the movie when everything goes to shit. And he is betrayed by people and arrested as a sympathizer of Napoleon. And of course, this is all set after the Napoleonic era, where the French at the time were trying to get rid of traitors and Napoleon supporters, in inverted commas. And Dantes gets caught up in that and is thrown into prison on the French equivalent of Devil's Island for eternity. Essentially, he is going to be locked away until he dies. The story is cool because while in prison, he plots his revenge. There is a fellow inmate that teaches him the way of high society, and then he is bequeathed this unimaginable fortune, and he returns to France as the Count of Monte Cristo, where he takes out all the motherfuckers who did him wrong. Like, it is the ultimate tale of revenge. It is so fucking satisfying, this story. And I think this adaptation is one of the best I've seen. Like, Gerard Depardieu did a really good TV series back in the day, like a mini series. I don't remember much of it, and I remember that being quite good. But this one borrows from the same ideas that the Three Musketeers did, in which it kind of pop cultures it up, if you will. Like, there is Mission Impossible style mask play in this, which is really cool.
This version of the Count of Monte Cristo feels like it is not embarrassed to say that it was based on a book.
Well, the American versions tend to make it like action movies.
Tend to sexy it up, right? They don't want to tell you that it's based on a tome of a book and it's got a lot of pages of him just talking to himself and being very introspective and just plotting away. But here they show it to you for the most part. And I think I liked that. I liked that this wasn't shying away from its literary roots.
That said, what the screenwriters do is perform a very good act of adaptation. They've surgically removed all of the, in inverted commas, unnecessary bits for the screen and really narrowed the focus down to the revenge tale, to the story that they really want to tell. And I think that's why it works so well, because it captures the essence of those 1,300 pages. It doesn't betray it at all, but at the same time, it gives you this entertaining romp. I mean, this thing is pacey, it moves, it's 3 hours long, and one of those hours is set in the prison, and yet things happen it's kinetic. It's got momentum.
Never in any of those 3 hours did I feel any of the things I'm seeing on screen as unnecessary. Even that hour that's on screen, you're like, oh no, keep me here. I want to be here a little. Like, that's one of my complaints. I felt like there were bits where I wouldn't say rushed, but they sort of waved away. Like you were saying, how Edmund Dantes learns of the ways of gentlemanliness. He learns how to become a count in the prison, and we don't see any of that. And sure, yes, that bit is told over 10 years. I get it. I don't want to see his fellow inmate teaching him how to walk and how to sip tea and all that, right? Like, I don't need it.
And I think we don't need that, right? Because he is the son of a housekeeper of an aristocratic family. And so there's a certain amount of stuff that he's already aware of because, he eats meals with them. He knows where the forks go and where the spoons go.
Yeah.
And God knows we've seen that version of a montage so many times already.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cunning that they do away with that. And of course, yes, because it's set over the period of 10 to 14 years, we'll just be getting montage after montage, which will feel kind of pointless, but also I think will undermine the passage of time that they're trying to portray in that hour when he's in prison.
But also, I can see a writer who's less confident spending that time to give me character. There will be these montage sequences, and then late at night, the two of them will be sitting in their cells and they'll be talking about, like, why is water wet? They'll be talking about character. Where are you from? Honestly, I didn't need it. Like, if you were to give me all of that, that would be fluff. That would be story baggage that me as an audience, I don't need. Because what I need to know, what I want to know, is how Edmund Dantes gets out, is how Edmund Dantes becomes the Count of Monte Cristo, and how he then takes his revenge against Villefort and all the other guys that have wronged him. And I don't need to have Dantes laid out during that hour, right? Oh, this is what I think I want to do. And then the other guy goes, no, you shouldn't do it like that. A gentleman wouldn't. I don't need that. I want to just see the result of the plotting. I don't need to see the actual plotting, at least in this film. That worked out great. It was pacey, man, for a 3-hour film and a book that is 1,000 pages long,
1,300 pages.
Yeah, it moves.
For me, watching this movie, a couple of things really stood out. One, it was incredibly entertaining. I absolutely loved it. And two, adapting The Count of Monte Cristo is like adapting The Lord of the Rings or Dune. It is a very difficult task. And what these screenwriters and directors have done is fantastic. It's adapting the unadaptable. Most versions of this book that work are miniseries or TV series. I think there's actually a 2024 TV series as well.
Really?
It's a French-Italian TV series. I haven't seen it. I don't know how good it is. But for me, this movie feels definitive. It's what you want when you are adapting such a monster of a book. It also looks absolutely fantastic, which reinforces my statement that Hollywood is broken. Because this movie was made for about 43 million euros. It was the most expensive French movie made in 2024, and it looks absolutely incredible. Like, something is wrong that Gladiator 2, which also looks good, exceeds 300 million US dollars when the French can do this. Yes, I agree. There are tons of chateaus and castles they can use, and they don't have to do much work on it because all of that still exists. And mind you, my God, the atmosphere it adds to this movie is fantastic. But still, a lot of the other stuff is amazing. The opening sequence set at sea looks incredible. Like, I was completely immersed in this movie. Within 5 minutes, I was all in. And I was at the edge of my seat and I was rooting for this guy. I know the story. I know what happens. I've read the book. And yet I was tense and I was intrigued and I was excited. This is a really fucking good movie.
Yeah. 42 million euros is about 46 million US dollars.
That is stupid lah.
Yeah, and it's already grossed 72 million worldwide.
There you go.
I hope it keeps going. The Count of Monte Cristo, I think production-wise, the stuff on the ships looked fantastic. It didn't look like it was shot on some green screen. It looked like they took a ship from the 1800s, sailed it out into the ocean and did their thing. I thought that was great. I thought the dressing down of the port city of Marseille was fantastic. The chateau that Dantes grows up in looks beautiful. It all works very, very well. At no point did I notice any green screen, even really. You know, like how in American films they'll do the backdrop as green screen or blue screen. I didn't notice it here. It felt like they were on sets, or at least on dressed down sets, and it was great. It really felt lived in. You really get the atmosphere of post Napoleonic France. It looked grimy, it's dirty. I mean, to be fair, the Three Musketeers did very well as well. Man, this thing just really, I'm tempted to almost read the book now because it was so intense. When he puts his grand plan into action, I think I was on the edge of my seat. Like, oh, what's happening next? Oh, what's going to happen next? Oh, what's going to happen next? There's no moment where the Count lays it all out to you, the audience. It sort of just plays out and you go, oh shit, that was the plan. Oh shit, that was the plan. Oh shit, that was the plan. It was so well done.
And the pace is strident. Like, it is constantly moving. For a 3-hour movie, you do not feel it. And I think that is probably its greatest compliment, because God knows we hate the 3-hour movies. A lot of the time it feels unnecessary. But in this one, it feels like there was no filler. All of it felt absolutely necessary. And go and read the book, because the one thing about Dumas, whether it's Three Musketeers, Count of Monte Cristo, Man in the Iron Mask, all of his books feel like this as well. They feel like they've been written for the screen almost.
Right.
They were written hundreds of years ago, but it feels like they were written for the screen because they were incredibly pacey, they were incredibly cinematic. I think that is one of his greatest achievements as a writer. He really knows how to capture the momentum of a story. And that's something that these guys have done very well in both the Three Musketeers and the Count of Monte Cristo. I personally think it is the perfect companion piece for Gladiator 2 that also comes out this week, because they're both cut from the same cloth. They're old-fashioned movies, and they're escapist romps. And they both have central characters that want revenge. They play out very, very differently, and they are very different movies, but both of them are incredibly enjoyable.
I mean, look, I will be the wet blanket here and say the Count of Monte Cristo is not action-packed.
That's not the story, though.
But that's not this story, exactly. If you caught the Three Musketeers last year, this isn't that. There is no sword fights. There are no grand plans against militaries and any of that stuff.
But I will say this. This movie is done so well that I didn't even miss the bromance of the Musketeers, which is what made those versions so good as well.
Yes, I agree. What I think is that this is it's a film that is reliant on plot. It is about intrigue. It is about revenge. It's about story. This isn't leaning into explosions and fights and big sword fights, whatever. None of that. I mean, yes, there's one sword fight in the end, but it's not necessary. It was not necessary to this movie. I was really engrossed and wrapped up in the plot machinations and the ways the Count of Monte Cristo found out information and what he did with that information and how it worked out in his plan. I thought that was great. I really, really enjoyed this film.
We highly recommend The Count of Monte Cristo. It is showing at selected GSC outlets. So look on their website and their app to find out where. Book your tickets. You will not be disappointed. Let us know what you think once you've seen it. You know how to reach out. Goggler MY, all of our social media feeds. You can also email us on podcast@goggler.my or send us a WhatsApp on the Goggler hotline, 012-524-5208. Thank you so much for listening. This is the Goggler Podcast.